Did you know a roller coaster only needs the first hill to gain enough momentum to carry you through the whole ride? I think that'll preach. When we look at what happened to Eve in the garden, I want you to think back. This is in Genesis 3. The serpent came and asked her a question. He inverted the statement God had made to Adam in Genesis 2:17, and then he stepped back and he let Eve's brain, what her heart really wanted, that did the rest of the work. He didn't help her to pick the apple. I keep saying apple. I think it was a peach. But the serpent didn't help Eve pick the fruit. He just made a suggestion. And I think he's still doing the same thing to believers everywhere today. There are thoughts that come to your mind that are not necessarily yours. However, over time, you've been studied. The same way the serpent was in Genesis 2:17, we don't see him talking, but he had to have been there because he later says to Eve what God had said to Adam. So you have lurkers, spiritual lurkers, the ops, that are lurking around that have watched you and me do the things that we do. And then when things are suggested to us, when things happen in our lives, our brains over time develop a pattern for behaving. Now, your brain is doing this to help you not have to think so hard about everything. It's autopilot. And so when a thing happens, when you're triggered, when a suggestion is given to you, when a thought comes to your mind, and especially when it's the enemy or when it's you thinking impure things or things that you should not do, that thought travels down a familiar pathway, a neural pathway in your brain to take you through the same steps that you've always done. It is why I think the Bible says in the New Testament that we are to put off the old man and put on Christ. We are to renew our minds, okay? All of these things that we are told to do in the Bible have been proven now in neuroscience. So I'm telling you something that's actually biblically true and scientifically true. So when that thought comes to mind, like for Eve, the serpent made a suggestion and then she acted on it. Instead of going through the whole action, taking the fruit, getting into the argument, fussing somebody out, sending that angry email, yelling at your spouse, yelling at your children, instead of doing all of those things, when you are triggered, you have an opportunity in that moment to ask yourself, do I want to go on autopilot at this moment? Do I want to go down the same path that I usually go down when this trigger happens? Instead of praying later, God, forgive me, which is great, you should. Instead of having to pray that, what if you prayed instead, like, God, build a new pathway in my mind? What if you prayed instead, God, help me to put on Christ today so that whatever things come to me, whether they're suggestions and thoughts that come to mind that are not necessarily yours, but when thoughts come to mind, when people do things and I want to respond, help me to have put on Christ before I start my day so that when these things come, and they will, you have ops, you have spiritual ops, opposition, but you also have human ops. There are people that are out there that don't necessarily like you. They don't necessarily want to see you do what God has called you to do, the ops. But you still, for you, because you have to stand before God, you still can say, God, help me put on Christ before I start dealing with this person, before I respond to this email, before I get behind the wheel of my car, before I call my child in here to correct something they've done. Help me put on Christ. Help me not to go down that same track. Help me not to get on the roller coaster where this thing that triggers me, that's the momentum that you get going up that first hill on a roller coaster. And then it carries you through the rest of the ride. Help me not to get up there and get on this roller coaster to ride down these tracks. This is a thing that has happened to you recently and you got on the roller coaster. And that ride, your thoughts took you, that one thing that triggered you took you to a whole nother place. You went through the whole ride because once you're in the ride, it's hard to stop a roller coaster. So last question, which train you riding today?